Brainworks!
Brainworks.
Brainworks!
The show where we learn
All about the brain!
With me, Noggin the Brain.
Did you know that your eyes are the windows to your brain, but you don't necessarily need your eyes to see? In this episode of Brainworks, we'll learn how the eyes, vision, and your brain are all related. We'll also learn how to take care of your eyes and how to keep them in tip-top shape. Hi, my name's Eric Chudler. I'm a neuroscientist in the Department of Bioengineering at the University of Washington. I'm also the executive director of the Center for Neurotechnology. What all that means is I'm really interested in learning all about the brain.
Hey, Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, Jeanette. Hi, Covey. Welcome to the lab. Why don't you grab some lab coats and I'll be with you in just a minute.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks for seeing us today. I feel like I've been having some trouble with my eyes lately.
And we both have various questions about things related to our eyes. We heard about kids having eye strain from online school and screen time and how the eyes are the windows to the brain, and we're just so overwhelmed. Can you please help us learn more about vision and our brains?
Sure, I can see how that's a lot. Well, let me break it down for you. Light is carried on wavelengths of energy. And then that energy comes into our eyes. It's bent by our cornea, which is a transparent part on the outside of the eye. And after that light is bent by the cornea, it goes through that black part of your eye called the pupil. And the pupil can open and close depending upon how much light there is. So if there's not much light, the pupil has muscles in it that can open it. If there's too much light, the pupil can close and narrow that hole. As light passes through the pupil there, it then goes through another part of your eye called the lens. And the lens also helps bend those light rays. And as those light rays are bent through the lens, they can become focused on the back part of your eye called the retina.
Well, what happens when light isn't focused on the retina?
Good question. If light is focused in front of the retina, it's something that's called nearsightedness. You can see near. If light is focused behind the retina, then you're farsighted. Okay? Now, in the retina, you've got two special kinds of cells that are responsive to light. You've got one kind of a cell called a rod and another kind of cell called a cone.
But if you only have two types of receptors, then how can you see color?
In fact, you've got three kinds of cone receptors. You've got blue ones, you've got green ones, and you've got red ones. So what happens is that when light hits our photoreceptors, it causes a chemical reaction that sends an electrical signal up to other cells in the retina. And each of these different kinds of cone receptors, because they're responsive to a different frequency of light, they give more or less activity to other cells in the retina. Finally, the last layer of the retina, which is in front of the very front of the retina, is called a ganglion cell. It's kind of a nerve cell, which has dendrites, it's got a cell body, and it's got a long axon. And these long axons are all collected in one part of your eye called the optic nerve. And that optic nerve is then sent to your brain, where your brain tries to understand what's happening. And it's in that occipital lobe where our brain tries to understand our color and shape. It gives you the perception of what's happening in the outside world. Do you know what happens if light rays hit the part of your retina where the optic nerve exits your eye?
No.
Well, I've got an experiment to show you what you see, or what you don't see. So what I want you to do is take one of these papers, and I want you to hold it out in front of you so that the happy face is on the right and the sad face is on the left. Hold it all out in front of you. Now what I want you to do is close your right eye, and with your left eye, look across at the happy face. So even though you're only looking at the happy face, you can still see that sad face in your peripheral vision. Don't look at the sad face. Look only at the happy face. Now, looking only at the happy face, bring the paper closer to your face. Looking only at the happy face, what happens to the sad face?
Oh, yeah.
What happens?
I don't see the sad face anymore.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's completely gone. Now bring it a little bit closer to your face, and it should reappear.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
That's because the light that's reflected off of the sad face lands on the part of your retina with no photoreceptors. That's because the optic nerve is blocking that part of the retina.
Now it's your turn. Go to Eric Chudler's website shown here, and you can try it yourself or with friends.
So these are called Benham's tops. They were invented more than 100 years ago by a toy maker for his kids. And what I want you to do is, you can see it's just a black and white pattern, but I want you to do is spin it and then tell me what you see. So what do you see when you spin it like that?
Oh, those colors.
What color do you see?
Red, green, some blue.
And some blue too. Now that's spinning in clockwise. Stop them and spin in the other direction and see what you see.
Yeah, those
There you go.
they're in different places, it looks like.
Different places?
Yeah.
But look, it's a completely black and white pattern. So to this day, there's no good scientific explanation about how our brain sees colors when we spin these discs. It's likely that our color that we see when we spin those discs has something to do with how these rods and cones are activated in our retina and the signals that are sent to our brain. But to this day, there's still no good scientific explanation about how Benham's tops make us see color.
Didn't see the colors? Well, that's okay. Some people don't see them at all. But if you want to try it at home, check out the webpage here to make your own Benham's disc.
So we've learned a little bit about how our eyes work, how our brain interprets what we see, a little bit about color, a little bit about our retina and the photoreceptors that change light energy into electrical signals. But Kavi, I'm a neuroscientist, I'm not an eye doctor, so I can't tell you what's wrong with your eyes. But I've got some friends that might be able to shed some light on the situation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Eric. Hope to see you later.
What is it called when people have fuzzy vision when they look at distant objects? Nearsighted, astigmatism, or farsighted? Stay tuned to find out the answer.
BrainWorks is brought to you by the Dana Foundation, Do It, and UW Video.
What is it called when people have fuzzy vision when they look at distant objects? Nearsighted, astigmatism, or farsighted? The answer is nearsighted, because they see better close up. People with fuzzy vision close up are farsighted.
Eric helped us understand about illusions, what our brain sees, and how our eyes work.
Yeah, but I'm still wondering why my eyes are acting so strangely. So we came here to the Eye Center at the University of Washington to see a doctor and to get some answers.
Hi, Dr. Fang. We heard you specialize in eyes. Can you tell us more about that?
Of course. So I'm an ophthalmologist. That means I went to medical school to become a doctor and then specialized in eyes for the next residency training for 4 years. So that means I can treat any kind of eye disease such as eye pain, blurry vision, and things like that with surgery or with medicines.
It sounds like you can figure out what's going on with his eyes.
Please.
So, why do people need glasses and why does vision change?
Some of that depends on who your parents are and genetics. So if your parents are nearsighted, you're more likely to be nearsighted. And some of it just changes as you grow. As you get older, the eye changes shape, and so does your sight.
But how do you check someone's vision to see if they need glasses or not?
Let's take a look. Covey, are you ready for some tests?
Tests? Oh, man.
Well, not that type of test. Don't worry. These are super easy and are just tests of your visual function. You don't have to study for them. Come on in.
Oh, okay.
I use a vision chart. It's a chart full of different letters that get progressively smaller and smaller. So I try to get you to see the smallest letters I can. And if you can get to the 20/20 line, that means your vision is excellent. All right, see what line you can read up there.
E, F, P, T, O, Z, L, P, E, D.
If you can get to the 20/20 line, that means your vision is excellent. But if you can't, I use a device that changes the prescription right in front of you, that glasses prescription, and I switch it until you see perfectly. In addition to vision, I'll check how your pupils respond to light. I'll look at how your eyes are aligned. I'll check your peripheral vision, and I'll check your eye pressure. Sometimes I'll dilate your eyes and use a microscope to take a look at all the different layers of your eye, including the back of your eye where your retina and optic nerve are. All
But first, here's a few things that could be wrong with Covey's eyes.
Refractive error, which means you might need glasses. Infection of the eye. Ugh, yuck, like pink eye. Color blindness, cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration, idiopathic intracranial hypertension, diabetic retinopathy, Graves' eye disease, floaters, dry eyes, trauma to the eye, like baseball to the eye, scissors to the eye, food in the eye, basketball to the eye, hockey puck to the eye, stick in the eye, lotion in the eye, sunscreen in the eye, hat scratch to the eye, bird droppings in the eye, punch to the eye, pencil in the eye.
So many more.
Wow, there really is a lot that could be wrong with your eyes, Covey.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. How do I keep my eyes and vision in the best shape?
There are a lot of things you can do for your eye health and safety. Here are some important things to know. First off, protect your eyes. Eye injuries are the #1 cause of vision loss in children, and 90% of those injuries can be prevented with safety goggles. If you're around any kind of explosives like fireworks, or if you're around harmful chemicals like in chemistry lab, put those safety goggles on to protect your eyes. Also, if you're playing sports like basketball or baseball, consider wearing protective eyewear as well. And if you're running around, please try not to run with sharp items in your hand, like scissors or sticks. If you wear contact lenses, don't wear them when you sleep. Sleeping in contact lenses can cause infection of the cornea, and that can lead to vision loss as well. And sometimes kids complain that their eyes feel tired, and that oftentimes is when they're on screens a lot. So if you're at the screen a lot, try to take plenty of breaks. And if you haven't had a checkup already, try to get regular checkups on your eyes, especially if you're having any vision problems or have any eye pain. Ultimately, what's healthy for your eyes is what's healthy for your body. So stay active, get plenty of exercise, spend time outdoors, and eat plenty of vegetables, and make sure to keep your eyes protected. Vision is so important to the way we perceive our world, and your eyes are a big part of that.
Thanks, Dr. Fang.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye!
According to PreventBlindness.org, the leading cause of sports-related eye injuries is racket sports such as tennis, basketball, or baseball. Stay tuned to find out the answer.
BrainWorks is brought to you by the Dana Foundation, Do It, and UW Video.
According to PreventBlindness.org, the leading cause of sports-related eye injuries is racket sports such as tennis, basketball, or baseball. The answer is basketball.
Hi, Dr. Rao. Eric wanted us to meet with you today to learn more about vision.
Yeah, I just had my eyes tested for eye disease, vision loss, and how good my vision is. So how is this look different than what Dr. Feng does?
I'd love to tell you about it. Let's head out this way and find out. I do research in the area of brain-computer interfaces.
What is a brain-computer interface?
A brain-computer interface, or BCI, is a device that can read information from the brain or write information into the brain. So you may ask, why is that useful? So if a person who is, for example, paralyzed, reading brain signals may be the only way in which they can communicate with their loved ones. So here is an example of a wearable brain-computer interface device where information is recorded with these wires or these electrodes from the scalp, and you can use that information, send that to a computer, amplify it, and then use the computer to process it and then decode information such as the person's intention to move a cursor or a prosthetic arm.
Can a BCI help someone who has trouble seeing or maybe is even blind?
That's a great question, Janet. Let me just explain to you on the board how one could go about doing that. Let's look at my cartoon depiction of the brain with, here's the eye, right, the eyeball, and there's a little lens here. Here's the retina, and the information from the eye gets sent through the optic nerve, and from there it goes to the back of the brain, so an area called the visual cortex. All right, so now you can ask the question, how can I send visual information into the brain? So the most obvious thing you could do is, for example, send information directly to the retina, for example, and that's the retinal implant, right? So you have the retina, you have the lens again, and you have the back of the eye with the retina here. You can have something called a retinal implant that can be used to send information into the brain. So you can see a little implant here with the wires, these electrodes, that can send information into the retina. And you can also have a camera, for example, that's sitting here. It's attached to a pair of glasses. And the wire goes to a computer, and the computer then sends information to the retinal implant through antennae. So here's some antennae that are on the side of the eye, and here's an external antenna. So by wirelessly sending information, the computer translates the images that are coming from the camera to the retinal implant.
So what does someone with a retinal implant see?
What they see depends on how many wires or electrodes you have that are sending information into the retina. So typically, there's only about 60 pixels worth of information being sent. And so you can imagine with that kind of very low resolution compared to the 1 million pixels that the human eye has, right, in a healthy eye, you can imagine that the information that's sent is quite low resolution, so it's not really much. So what they typically see are very coarse kinds of objects that are moving, a white against a black background, for example. They may be able to see a very big letter, like a big letter A, but unfortunately, they're not going to be able to use it to, for example, read a book, for example, or even to recognize a person's face, because there's not just enough information there for you to do that.
What if you stimulate the part of the brain responsible for vision? Eric said that the occipital lobe of the brain was responsible for vision-related things.
Yeah, Kavi, that's a great suggestion. So what if we, instead of sending information from the computer to the eye, what if we send information now directly to the brain? So suppose you have an implant here. So now you have a true brain-computer interface. And the hope is you can then convert camera images into some kind of pattern of stimulation, electrical stimulation, directly sent into the brain, right? So you can ask the question, okay, what if I send information to the back? This is the occipital cortex, as you were mentioning. And the occipital cortex, as I mentioned, is sensitive to edges and bars and lines and things like that. What if you want something more? Perhaps you could put the implant here, right? And you could perhaps see something beyond just edges, perhaps faces and so on, right? So these are the opportunities that exist if you go beyond a retinal implant to like a visual cortical implant.
Wow, that sounds really high-tech.
Yeah, it's definitely a very high-tech area, very exciting area to be in. And we would love to have young people like you work in this area and really take this forward. But I got to get to the lab right now. So it was great chatting with you.
One more thing. About the implants that you mentioned, is that something that someone can live with forever? Or if something goes wrong with it, how do they handle that?
That's a great question, Janet. Let me tell you about that. Imagine a person who has an implant, and now imagine if the device stops working, or if it needs parts, or if it needs repairs. Now, if the company that manufactured the device is no longer in existence, who is going to support that patient and their device? A bigger issue also is security and privacy. So for example, if you have wireless implants, then you potentially could have bad actors who are actually trying to intercept or send messages inside that are not really good messages, right? So we have issues of security, and then finally there's also some really important issues of identity and agency. So if you have an implant that's interacting with the brain, then over time the person's personality may change because of the way it's interacting, the brain is interacting with the implant. And so we have issues of agency as well, where the person may no longer feel in control of their own intentions and so on. So I think the field as a whole is really paying a lot of attention to these issues, and there's several solutions that are being suggested. There's some hope that there'll be some government regulations coming in. We're working with device manufacturers and so on at our center. So ultimately the goal is to have a very safe and beneficial implant technology that will help humanity as opposed to causing issues due to abuse of these technologies. So these are all important challenges that our field is trying to address right now, and we're quite hopeful of a bright future for these technologies.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rao, for sharing the technology and your research with us.
Yeah, it's amazing what can be done with technology. Maybe one day I can have a bionic eye implant.
I think you better check with your parents about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
In dim light, which of the receptors in your eye are doing most of the work? Cones, rods, or pillars? Stay tuned to find out the answer.
BrainWorks is brought to you by the Dana Foundation, Do It, and UW Video.
In dim light, which of the receptors in your eye are doing most of the work? Cones, rods, or pillars? The answer is rods. In dim light, the receptors in your eyes called rods are doing most of the work. However, the rods do not provide any information about color. The other photoreceptors in your eye, called cones, are the ones that are used for seeing color. The cones do not work well in dim light. That's why you cannot see colors in dim light.
Hey, come on in.
Eric, we learned so much from Dr. Feng and Dr. Rao.
And Dr. Feng did a bunch of tests on my eyes.
Yeah, humans are really visual animals. We get most of the information about the outside world through our eyes. That's why it's really important that you keep your eyes in the best condition they can be and protect them.
And you were right, we don't need our eyes to see.
Yeah, Dr. Lau said we use our brains to see, not our eyes.
Yeah, that's right. And think about this. Even when we're asleep, our eyes are closed, yet our brains make visual images. That's because your brain is what creates the perception of the world. Thanks for joining us this time on BrainWorks. I think we've learned a lot about our eyes, our brains, and vision.
Your eyes are the windows to your brain, so it's super important to take care of them.
Make sure to get your eyes checked regularly to keep them healthy.
And don't forget to wear your sunglasses, your safety goggles, and any equipment that's necessary when you play sports to protect your eyes.
Thanks for joining us.
And we'll see you all next time on
BrainWorks!